Three mere mortals discover their ability to create entire universes with their minds alone. Upon discovering their abilities, these three, gods if you will, join forces to create the Dark and Stormy Nights, a supercharged team of creatives with the aim of helping artists and writers around the world while combating the forces of boredom and mundanity. They are the Dark and Stormy Nights.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Dark and Stormy Nights. This is Loki.
And this is Tyr.
And this week we have an exciting aftermath of the battle at the beach house, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so Tyr brings this to you. It's going to be a nice long chapter. Hopefully we'll get a few answers and some closure on some issues. So.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have anything to announce before we get into it?
I don't think so.
Don't forget to follow us on at Dark Stormy K1 or on Reddit at r/Dark and Stormy Nights. Join the discussion. We actually talk about the story we're writing on there, and we talk about possible changes in the story. We have some. I don't know if we're going to bring it up from JW this week or next week.
Mm-hmm.
He gave us some cool ideas. Maybe we'll use some of that.
Slip in there?
So, yeah.
Yeah, he's got good stuff.
So we'll take a look at that. But you can join, too. You can argue this out with us and help us decide where the story goes. So come right along with us. So in the meanwhile, Tyr's got a story. So let's hear it.
Okay. This is it. Eliot pointed out the familiar storefront filled with the same hideous wallpaper that no one in their right mind would buy. Not in this decade, at least. Jeb pulled the SUV right onto the empty sidewalk outside the shop, giving them just enough room to get the doors open. The two of them carried Lee right into the shop, leaving their ride on the sidewalk. Do you think we should move that, Eliot asked. Jeb dropped one of Lee's legs and looked down at the key fob in his hand. Should be fine. The poor soul that bought it splurged on the deluxe package. He hit a button on the fob, and the entire vehicle disappeared. Eliot's jaw dropped, but his amazement was interrupted. Can I help you, gentlemen? The same woman from last time blinked expectantly at Eliot, completely unfazed by the body they were carrying. Yeah, we need to get to the bazaar. The woman tapped her chin. Sorry, hon, I'm afraid we don't have a location at any bazaar. Can I interest you in some wallpaper? Our most popular patterns are along this wall. The clerk gestured to the right of the counter, where miles of wallpaper so ugly Eliot was completely certain no one had ever purchased it gathered dust. What? No, we're not here for wallpaper. These here are on sale today. 10% off. The clerk continued on in her raspy voice as if Eliot hadn't spoken. Eliot struggled under Lee's weight, growing frustrated at the act. Son, I think you're going to need a code, Jeb pointed out. Eliot's eyes widened in realization. Oh. His brow scrunched, and Jeb shifted his weight. I don't suppose y'all have any fried tarantula here? Jeb asked, as if that was a perfectly normal thing to ask at a wallpaper shop. The clerk didn't question the odd request. Just wallpaper, sorry, sugar. At Eliot's look, Jeb shrugged. The one in my area is under a Cambodian restaurant. Dancing dragons, Eliot exclaimed suddenly. But the clerk didn't budge. I'm afraid we don't carry that one. You might find something you like along this wall. She gestured again to her dust-covered display. Eliot grew frustrated, trying to remember the words again. He could hardly hear himself think over the Bee Gees playing on the old boombox sitting on the back counter. Meanwhile, Lee's body temperature was fluctuating concerningly in his arms, which were barely holding the big man up. He struggled under the hunter's weight. It's something about dancing dragons, he insisted. Perhaps you can find something that interests you here. Again, the infuriating woman gestured to her stupid paper rolls. Reaching his limit after a really terrible day, Eliot's face turned an unhealthy shade of red as he lost it. No one has ever or will ever want any of this paper. Aside from the fact that no one uses wallpaper anymore, no one would ever want this paper in particular. It's like you went out of your way to find the most awful shit ever created. These patterns are so hideous that it's offensive. Eliot struggled, panting and dropping to his knees under Lee's weight, as Jeb dropped the man's legs and went over to browse the very wallpaper that had just sent Eliot on a tangent. Within moments, Jeb cleared his throat. How about this Disco Dragon paper here. Is that what you were looking for? The clerk jumped into action. Sure thing, hon. We have more of that one in the back. The woman's beehive bobbled and her ample hips swayed as she led the way. Jeb rushed over to help Eliot load Lee onto a nearby platform cart and wheel him after the woman. By the time they caught up, the freight elevator was already waiting. They wheeled Lee into the metal box, and Eliot paused, remembering the last trip. He searched his pockets, coming up with his last $20 and offered it to the woman. Sorry for losing it back there. It's been a bad day. I apologize. She eyed the money with an arched eyebrow, but finally accepted the alternate currency and gave a nod. Hazard of the job, hun. Only when Eliot saw that Jeb had already strapped himself and Lee in did he remember the drop. He scrambled for a handhold as his stomach made its way to his throat, and by the time the elevator screeched to its grinding halt, he was more than ready to find solid land again. His trip through the bazaar the first time had been relatively tame. Lee had tromped through the place with Eliot on his heels. The beings manning the booth had eyed the hunter warily, but they hadn't dared to approach. As Jeb and Eliot made their way through the crowded marketplace, Eliot realized that Lee had everything to do with that. Without the big, grumpy man's protection, the shop owners descended on the fresh meat. He struggled to keep up with Jeb as he wheeled Lee through the bodies, crowding in from the sides. A beautiful woman with teal hair and bright almond-shaped eyes dragged her hand across Eliot's chest as he tried to pass. You're looking for love, yes? I can help. Eliot flushed red. No, thank you. I'm in a hurry. He disentangled himself from the woman's arms only to find another set clutching him closer. And he escaped those only to find another set groping his ass, while the first set sank into his hair. Eliot yelped at the wandering fingers. He struggled to escape before finally stepping closer, dropping to the ground and running the second he scrambled back to his feet. His mad dash was interrupted by a cloud of some kind of perfume sprayed right in his face. Eliot doubled over, coughing. Nice, right? An oddly accented voice said right in his ear. Eliot jumped, meeting the eyes of the waist-high creature with pointy ears. He held up the concoction he'd assaulted Eliot with and nodded his balding gray head. Works like a charm, too. This stuff got me 6 wives. I'm a pretty good-looking guy, I'll give you that, he said simply, rubbing his bulbous nose and patting his bulging belly. But 6 wives is a stretch even for a guy like me. So what do you say? I'll give you a good deal, an offer you can't refuse. The sparkle in the creature's eye was one even Eliot knew not to trust. No thanks, not interested. He hurried away as the little man yelled after him. Eliot caught sight of Jeb and hurried to catch up, only to be brought up short again by the brightest blue eyes he'd ever seen, set in the bluest face he'd ever seen. The unusually large eyes blinked at him, the blue man's bald head tipping as if he was asking a question, though he'd spoken no words. Eliot was captured by the taller man. He radiated magic and mystery. I can help, the deep melodic voice finally said. You wish to save your friend. You would do anything to help him. I have just what you need. Eliot's eyes widened. Yes, that's exactly right. The blue man led him into his booth, on bare feet, his loose pants swishing soundlessly around his legs. The man wore no shirt. His muscles flexed as he bent to pull a hidden compartment from the bottom of one of his display cabinets. Various jewels, treasures, and trinkets littered the large compartment. The magic man plucked one of the gold pieces from the velvet-lined case and handled it delicately by the handle. Eliot's shoulders fell. This is what you need, the man assured him. The enchanting voice was almost enough to convince Eliot he was right, but he shook his head. Unless there's medicine in that golden gravy boat, I don't think that's what I need. Ah, but child, cures come in many forms. Power, riches, love. You could have anything, be anyone. Everything you've ever wanted is but a purchase away. What would you ask for, I wonder? Power and money? I think not. The mentor, yes. The girl, perhaps? He leaned in closer. His alluring whisper in Eliot's ear seemed to go straight to his head. A family, he questioned. Eliot sucked in a breath. The man seemed to see into his very soul, taking him apart only to offer him exactly what his heart longed for. The man smiled when he saw the surrender in Eliot's eyes, but his moment of victory was interrupted by the cocking gun that was quickly wedged between them. Eliot, step aside, son. Jeb stepped in closer, but lost his advantage when his gun disintegrated into a poof of magic and ash. Before Eliot could blink, a new gun was pointed in the blue man's face. Though gun wasn't the right word. The thing was huge, and where the hell he'd been concealing a weapon that large, Eliot couldn't begin to guess. Try that with this one, Jeb challenged. The blue man lifted his chin. I can smell the magic on it from here. But it matters not. You're too late. The boy has already agreed. No, he didn't. I caught the end of your sales pitch, and he never agreed or negotiated payment. The man crossed his arms over his bare chest. Humans. Words are not needed when the heart speaks a language of desire. Well, he's human, and so am I. And in our culture, words are needed to make a deal. The blue man didn't budge. The walls around him began wavering, as if reality itself was rippling. A deal is a deal. Jeb cocked his gun. It's an interesting collection you got there. He nudged the hidden collection that was still sitting open. Recognize a few of those items myself. Well enough to know they're stolen. I'm sure the Summer Queen would be glad to know where her scepter has disappeared to. And the glass case? A captured leprechaun? Are you trying to start another war? This kind of contraband would put you away for a long time. The rippling stopped abruptly. Jeb nodded. Freedom is a hard thing to gamble after an eternity of servitude, huh? There was no deal made. The boy comes with me, debt-free. And you will clear out your stock. I'll be back to make sure this is a legal operation. And release the leprechaun. Not here. And not on the human world. Put it back where it came from. Do we have an understanding? The man did not look happy about the outcome of his negotiation, but he reluctantly nodded his agreement, and Jeb didn't hesitate to rush Eliot out of the booth, snatching the card on the way. Once they'd disappeared into the crowd, he shot Eliot a look. Do not ever make deals with Jinn. Every wish they grant comes at a price, one that sure as hell ain't worth whatever you got out of it. Right, okay. Now that Eliot was away from the magical man, it seemed obvious that he should have been more cautious, but at the time, he'd been mesmerized. He didn't know why he'd agreed so easily, but he'd remember to be more cautious in the future. He needed to focus on getting Lee to the woman they'd seen last time. Lee seemed to have a good relationship with the beautiful woman, and Eliot hoped she could help. The problem was, he had no idea how to get there again. He'd been admittedly a bit distracted the first time they'd visited. Where to, kid? Jeb asked when they came to a crossroads. I can pause there.
Okay. All right. Do we want to discuss it for a little bit?
It's up to you.
Okay. I love it. I love that the bazaar. You brought more life to the bazaar, added more things to it, and what have you. So I feel like it's filling in between what I, brought to the bazaar the first time and then what you've brought to it this time. It's gotten a little bit darker. I think that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a dangerous place. We had always kind of seen it that way.
So, no, I like how the bustle. I love the frustration from trying to get the code, to trying to figure out the password and everything. So, yeah, and that's exactly how I imagine the lady to be, just, yeah, it's there. Come
I
on.
have wallpaper here.
You can do this.
So, yeah.
No, yeah, it's good stuff. And yeah, I like Jeb a little more with his interjection there and everything. So I didn't quite see in Jeb what you saw in Jeb initially, and now I kind of feel a little bit more of that. So
yeah, I mean, I kind of just saw him as like a gentleman cowboy who really likes his guns,
Right.
So he's got like that kind of like dueling personality there, like the violence and shooting things like gets him off, but at the same time, he could be very gentlemanly when he needs to be.
I feel like when Elliot's questioning where the new gun came from, he's like looking down at his crotch, like maybe he was hiding it in there. Where was that? So,
yeah.
But yeah, no, I dig it. I feel like we got to do something with that gin later. So
yeah, I like the gin.
Maybe he either becomes a problem or something later. I don't know. So.
For sure, they're very dangerous things when they're free.
So well, and especially now he's scorned. Now he's been, he's pissed off from, getting, because they don't take well to not having the best of the deal. Right. And he just got fucked on a deal.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that they'll be coming back after Jeb in a.
So yeah,
world.
at least by that Jin's perception, he lost on a deal, and that's not okay. So, All right, we can come back in a little bit and finish this off.
Sounds
Cool.
good.
Why my drippings would go?
Because you were listening to the Dark and Stormy Nights podcast on iTunes, Google Play Music, or Podbean.
And we're back. Okay, so that was an amazing first half. I can't wait to see what you pull off for the second half.
Thank you.
Are you ready?
Yeah, just jump right back in.
All right, yeah, let's just jump right back into it.
Okay. Where to, kid? Jeb asked when they came to a crossroads. He looked in all directions, but nothing looked familiar. That way? He took a guess and pointed down one of the paths. Jeb raised an eyebrow, but dutifully pulled Lee along through the crowd, staying closer to Eliot after his earlier issue. When it became apparent that Eliot had chosen the wrong direction, he paused and turned back the way they'd come. Lee was looking worse, and they didn't have time to keep making guesses on where to go. Without a word, Jeb turned around and followed Eliot back towards the crossroads. Eliot's eyes scanned for anything familiar as they walked, and he breathed a sigh of relief when he finally spotted the strange suit that Lee had spoken to on their first visit. "Hey, excuse me," Eliot said to the steam-covered mask. "You know Lee, my partner. I need to get him to the lady at the grotto. Do you know where that is?" The suit turned its attention to Lee's body and seemed to weigh its options before finally looking back to Eliot. "You're going to want to hurry. He's not looking good. But I can tell you where you need to go. Head back to the crossroad. Take a left. After about 100 feet, the path will split off to the left. Take that path and keep going until you hit the grotto." Eliot's shoulders sagged in relief. "Thank you. I'll let Lee know how helpful you were." "Sure. Careful who you're throwing those words out around, though, kid. Not everyone here is as generous." Eliot was completely confused by the suit's response, but Jeb was already pulling him forward. The smell of cherry blossoms hit him moments before he finally laid eyes on the stone path to the grotto. Jeb followed Eliot until he finally laid eyes on the silhouette behind the fabric dancing in the non-existent breeze. Before he could pull back the silk, 2 guards closed in on either side. "Zana, Lee needs you," Eliot called seconds before the guards grabbed his arms. Once again, Jeb had pulled an oversized gun that he'd somehow concealed completely when it wasn't in his hand. The silk was pulled back, and Zana stepped around the guards to find Lee barely holding on. "Bring him this way," she said, her accented voice pulling him under her allure. The guard stepped back, and Jeb pulled Lee through the grotto, seemingly unaffected, leaving Eliot to follow. With a simple gesture, Zana commanded her guards to place Lee's body on her silk jewel-toned bed. She placed her hands on his chest, and with a few flashes of sparkling light, appeared under her palms. When she turned to face them again, her beautiful face was grim. "We must hurry if I'm to save him." Her tone was laced with pain, and Eliot knew that he would give her anything to save their friend. "What do you need?" "What do you have to pay for the magic to save him?" she asked. Eliot suddenly remembered giving his last $20 to the wallpaper clerk to get down to the bazaar. I don't know. I don't have any money on me, but I can get some." The woman's eyes softened. "A debt, then." "Yes, I can save Lee for a debt, but your money is worth little here." She stroked one red fingernail down Eliot's chest. "I will accept a debt, but not for human money." "What's the debt for, then?" Eliot asked. "There's much to be done. We can negotiate terms another day, when Lee is well. You can owe me a favor, and I will save Lee's life." Her musical voice purred, encouraging him to nod his agreement even as Jeb coughed next to him. "We are agreed, then, and I will get rid of that nasty hex on you at no charge." Eliot continued nodding his agreement, anything to keep hearing her voice. Then something she'd said registered. "Hex? What hex?" She smiled. Torgund is at it again. You were sprayed at his booth. But the scent is not what he's selling. It's the antidote to the hex he placed on you that makes him money. But I will cure you. You will not need his antidote. Now, I just need one ingredient that I do not have to save Lee." She handed him a piece of paper. "Take this to Poppy's apothecary. She will have this in stock." Jeb cleared his throat and pulled the piece of paper from Eliot's fingers. "I think I better take care of this. You've had enough trouble." He shot Zana a less than friendly glance. "I assume he'll be safe here while I pick this up." "Of course," she answered innocently. Eliot didn't understand how anyone could not be awed by Zana, but Jeb seemed almost irritated. The hunter shot Eliot a look filled with warning before turning his back and striding back through the hanging silk curtains. Zana placed her hands on Eliot's chest, and a tingling warmth rushed through him as her magic sparked. A wave of lust followed the path of the heat, making him flush and shift uncomfortably. There. The hex did not have a chance to properly take hold. You're safe. Now, I'll leave you with Lee while I prepare everything else. We must act quickly. Zana disappeared into her cavern, and Eliot sat next to Lee on the edge of Zana's bed. Lee's skin was scary pale, and dark, bruise-like circles had appeared under his eyes. His breathing had slowed to a frightening rate, and Eliot just didn't know if he could handle another loss in his life. It seemed like his whole existence was one loss after another. Family was practically a foreign concept to him, and anyone that had stepped in to fill that role, whether in the form of a foster parent, a friend, a boss, and now a mentor, had been taken from him for one reason or another. Pops had been the one to stick around the longest, giving Eliot a job at 17 and a place to live at 18. Pops had been in his life for a few years. Eliot was relieved as hell that the old man was alive and well, but the loss stung nonetheless. Sooner or later, everyone left him. Eliot didn't know how long he'd been staring down at the last person in his life. Literally a man he'd known for days, and yet he had nothing else. A hand landed on his shoulder, and Eliot startled, looking up at Jeb's serious face. The hunter held up a bag that looked like it was moving. Where'd she go? Eliot pointed towards the cavern she'd disappeared into and watched Jeb disappear after her, a little horrified. Flashes of magic could be seen in the dark, and eventually Jeb and Zana made their way back out. Eliot jumped up as Zana rushed over, forcing her potion past Lee's lips. It was a slow process, but when she was finished, she backed up and watched him expectantly. Except nothing happened. Lee's color didn't improve. His breathing didn't return to normal. Even as they watched, a trickle of blood made its way from Lee's nose. Zana pulled a piece of silk and blotted the blood from his face, then once again placed her palms on his chest and used her magic on him. When she opened her eyes again, they were misty, and she chewed her lip nervously. That told Eliot everything he needed to know. The spell wasn't working. He pushed down the anger and anguish that was threatening to pull him under. Isn't there anything else you can do? She shook her head, standing and pacing away from the bed with tears in her eyes. Once again, Eliot's anger reached a boiling point. And this time he had no rational outlet, nowhere to direct his rage at how much life just fucking sucked. But then rage didn't really need a rational thought, and he found his anger directed at the unconscious man lounging in a deathbed filled with colorful pillows. Eliot grabbed Lee by the shoulders with tears in his eyes. You dragged me into this mess, and now you're going to bail? Get up. What happened to being the best hunter in the area? You didn't even make it through one job. You put wolves on my ass and promised to protect me. Get up. You're not done. You don't get to be done. You don't get to leave me like everyone else. His shouts were echoing off the stone walls. His own hysterical words met his ears as the tears cleared, and a set of hazy, very confused eyes blinked back at him. Eliot gasped and staggered back a step as Lee blinked at his strange surroundings. The man sucked in a ragged breath and took stock of his body. He looked around, finally realizing where he was, and his eyes closed in frustration. Kid, what did you do? He growled. Eliot lifted his chin without an ounce of regret. Sorry, excuse me. Well, he regretted that last meltdown a little, but not the choice he made. We saved you, he answered. Lee sat up slowly. Yeah? At what cost? His eyes darted around the room until they landed on Zana. What did he give you? Her shoulders stiffened at the accusation. Magic is not free, Lee. You of all people know that. He gritted his teeth. What did he pay you with? A favor, Eliot answered. What? Lee barked. As in an open-ended favor? The hunter groaned and rubbed his hands over his face. Kid, what were you thinking? I was thinking I needed to save you. He pinched the bridge of his nose. Some things ain't worth the price, kid. He turned his glare on Zana. You took advantage of a kid days into his apprenticeship, he growled, ignoring the glare mirrored back in her eyes. Lee stood on shaky legs and got his bearings, and then stormed through the hanging fabric. Where are we going? Eliot asked as he and Jeb hurried to keep up. Might as well get some answers while we're here, he snapped, making Eliot feel like an idiot. And the further they got from the grotto, the more he realized why he was angry. He hadn't negotiated, hadn't even thought it through. He just agreed right after doing the same thing with the djinn. And now he didn't even understand why. What kind of answers, Jeb asked, earning a glare from Lee as well. Apparently, they were all on his bad side, though Jeb seemed unfazed by that bit of news. Got a good look at the thing controlling those kids. I'm going to get us a name. All right, that's where I stopped it.
No, it's good. In fact, I can almost see the cinematic of the whole thing, like the end of the episode or whatever. You know, like if you're watching a TV show or what have you, and then they'd start the next episode with the information.
Right.
And you're not sure how they got it or whatever. They might reference how they got it.
Right, and I figured, we've already seen him interrogate his contacts in the bazaar,
Right,
so
right.
it's basically going to be the same thing.
Yeah, he goes to the usual suspects. And
Right, so really all we're going to go into is, getting an answer, a
Right.
name. And so I had originally intended to show that part, to show him going to maybe the fortune teller or the demon or whatever to get that information. And then I was going to have him still pissed off at them, like go storming out of the wallpaper store and smack right into the invisible car that was left there. But yeah, the chapter was running a little bit long, and I figured that was going to make up a couple more pages. So
yeah, and realistically, all we need to do is he comes out of there and walks into the, like the next scene starts with him walking into the fucking invisible truck,
right,
and Elliot's like, so what did Esmeralda mean, Bodak? What is that?
right, right. So yeah.
So, no, I dig it. I think it was great. Yes, the kid was completely taking advantage of it, and I like that it starts to dawn on him. He has no idea what he's doing.
Right. It's not until he starts to walk away and their effect on him wears off that he realizes that he keeps falling under their...
Yeah, these are monsters, man. I mean,
Right.
she may not look like a monster. Just like the djinn didn't look like a monster. Maybe otherworldly, but not
No,
monsters.
they're alluring. Right.
But yeah, they took advantage of him. It was a trap. It was like the anglerfish. You're mesmerized by the beautiful light, and
Right.
you don't even see the giant set of teeth waiting for you.
Right.
So, and that's exactly what happens. Zana's gorgeous. Zana has the voice of a choir, but she is a snake,
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, she definitely had like that kind of allure and your money doesn't really work for me, but a favor I can
right, which
accept,
doesn't
yeah.
seem so bad until you
Right.
realize you don't know what a favor is to these
Right,
things.
exactly.
So, I mean, that guy that works for that demon started with a favor for him too.
Right, exactly.
And now he's a slave for eternity.
or until he finds out his names.
Right.
So yeah, that's...
No, I dig it. I love.
It kind of grew a little bit long there towards the end, so I had to cut it off. But otherwise,
No, it's fantastic. I can't believe you got 10 pages. That's like, that's a benchmark to work towards.
I mean, I think it's probably not our first 10-page chapter.
No, I had an 11-page chapter early on,
Yeah.
but and the callback to Poppy's Apothecary. Good stuff.
I wasn't sure if I should leave. I was at first looking for like witch names, and I'm like, why am I bother doing this?
Well, okay, but I mean, if we ever gloss back over it or whatever, I don't think it's Poppy that owns it anymore or whatever. Or maybe, it's her legacy, but her great-grandkid
Yeah,
owns
that's what
it.
I figured was that she was probably somebody's great whatever,
Right. Yeah, but or it was bought
or it's just no
from her,
connection at
or-
all, and it's just
No, but I like the idea that some of the things, it may exist within that world, or at least the underworld works that way.
yeah.
It's why these things are allowed to work here instead of being
Mhm.
hunted down. So, which might have been a mistake in some regards,
The captured creature I had half considered doing a brownie as well, and then I looked up some other like dangerous fake creatures, and I don't know. I went with the leprechaun. It wasn't my first choice, but
Yeah.
everybody knows what it is.
Sure.
You know?
Well,
And I liked
do we?
like making it seem really dangerous to Jeb, So
well, I mean, the myth that it's based off was really dangerous.
yeah.
So, but no, interesting stuff. Okay, so I guess we'll come back in the next show, and we will plan where this goes from here.
Do some plotting. Yep.
Okay, we'll see you next time. Oh, don't forget to follow us at the Dark Stormy K1 on Twitter, And let's discuss this on r/Dark and Stormy Nights on Reddit. So, and don't forget to go visit Tier's Facebook page at Nova Drake Writer.
Yeah.
Or
for
Twitter page, sorry, not Facebook.
Well, both.
Is it the same on both?
Yeah, you can search Facebook with the at Nova Drake Writer.
And she's got books for sale, so go check that out on Amazon and buy her books. She's got some amazing books. So any specials or deals or
I still
things
have that free book if you sign up for my newsletter.
So
that's going to be up for a while. Probably till like the first 2 or 3 books are out.
Go sign up for that newsletter. I'm signed up myself. So see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.